Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend several programs today, the second day of his visit to his parliamentary constituency of Varanasi in poll-bound Uttar Pradesh. Last night, he met the chief ministers of BJP-ruled states. He also carried out an inspection of Varanasi development works. Today, the Prime Minister will participate in a conclave of BJP chief ministers and to discuss governance-related matters and attend anniversary celebrations at a yoga foundation and meditation center. According to reports, the chief ministers will share with the Prime Minister their respective governance-related best practices. Now, on Monday, the Prime Minister inaugurated the 339 crore Kashi Vishwanath corridor phase of 1 just 2 months before the UP elections. This is the third project that the Prime Minister inaugurated in Uttar Pradesh in a week, and the Kashi launch was a full-on day-long extravaganza. In some of the key moments, the Prime Minister was seen taking a dip in the Ganga, throwing flowers at the construction workers who built the corridor that links the iconic Kashi Vishwanath temple with the ghats of the Ganga.
The cameras firmly focused on Prime Minister Narendra Modi as he inaugurated phase 1 of the Kashi Vishwanath corridor project that connects two icons in the holy city of Varanasi, the Ganga Ghats to the Kashi Vishwanath temple, and cost 339 crore rupees to build. A government project that's been turned into a mega day-long event. The Prime Minister also led the main rituals inside the Kashi Vishwanath temple, with not even Chief Minister Adityanath present, reaffirming Modi's lead role for the BJP in the UP polls. In this lengthy speech inside the Kashi Corridor complex, the Prime Minister invoked politics, gulami or colonization, and even the Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb.
मुझे खुशी है कि सदियों की गुलामी ने हम पर जो प्रभाव डाला था, जिस हिंद भावना से भारत को भर दिया गया था, अब आज का भारत उससे बाहर निकल रहा है। आज का भारत सिर्फ अयोध्या में प्रभु श्री राम का मंदिर ही नहीं बना रहा, बल्कि देश के हर जिले में मेडिकल कॉलेज भी बना रहा। औरंगजेब के अत्याचार, उसके आतंक का इतिहास साक्षी है, जिसने संस्कृति को कट्टरता से कुचलने की कोशिश की। यहां अगर औरंगजेब आता है तो शिवाजी भी उठ खड़े होते हैं।
For the BJP, the political hype around the corridor reflected in the massive build-up to the inauguration, from social media to an on-ground media saturation. Chief ministers of all BJP-ruled states are in Varanasi and will take part in a conclave with the Prime Minister. The inauguration was beamed live across UP and the country.
राष्ट्रपिता महात्मा गांधी ने इसी काशी में आकर के अपनी पीड़ा को व्यक्त किया था। यहाँ की गलियों, तंग गलियों को देख करके, यहाँ की गंदगी को देख करके, गांधी जी के नाम पर बहुत सारे लोगों ने सत्ता प्राप्त की होगी, लेकिन गांधी जी के उस सपने को साकार करने का कार्य कि काशी बाबा विश्वनाथ का धाम इस भव्य रूप में हो, वह पहली बार हम सबको देखने को प्राप्त हो रहा है।
All this despite questions over the intertwining of religion and politics and the opposition's attack on the BJP for what they call the use of government events for political gains. All schools in Varanasi were shut and teachers deputed to light lamps on Varanasi Ghats.
यहाँ तकरीबन 5000 शिक्षक शिक्षिकाएं लगे हुए हैं ड्यूटी में।
क्या क्या कर रहे हैं आप?
यहाँ पे रंगोली, पेंटिंग्स और दीप प्रज्वलन का कार्य सारे घाटों को सुसज्जित करने में सहयोग कर रहे हैं।
आप ही लोग कर रहे हैं?
जी बिल्कुल।
दिए जलवाना या रंगोली बनवाना आपके हिसाब से मतलब ये सही है? सरकारी इवेंट में इस तरह काम करवाना या आपका प्राथमिकता शिक्षा होनी चाहिए?
प्राथमिकता शिक्षा है सर, हमारा विद्यालय खाली नहीं है। मतलब प्रत्येक विद्यालय से 1 या 2 शिक्षक की ही ड्यूटी लगाई गई है, बाकी शिक्षक विद्यालय पे अपना कार्य कर रहे हैं।
On the streets of Varanasi, diverse opinion over the project.
जो कहते हैं तकलीफ होती है, तो मैं उनसे कहूंगी कि भाई उनको तकलीफ ना हो, क्योंकि हम हिंदू हैं और हम हिंदुस्तान में रहते हैं। और सच बात, मोदी जी के आने से पहले बार लग रहा है कि हम हिंदुस्तानी हैं, लेकिन ऐसा मुझे नहीं लग रहा है। हमारे साथ बहुत मुस्लिम भाई हैं, बहुत सारे धर्मों के लोग हैं, हम लोग मिलते जा रहे हैं, सब एक दूसरे को बधाई दे रहे हैं।
While the opening of the corridor will definitely ease access between the ghats and the iconic Kashi Vishwanath temple, it is the political hype around the project that the BJP hopes to cash in ahead of the 2022 assembly election in UP. With Vineet Verma and Ajay Singh, this is Alok Pandey, NDTV.
Now, several of these projects launched by the BJP before the UP polls have triggered attacks from opposition leaders, especially former UP Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav, who says they were initiated by the previous Samajwadi Party's government. On Monday, the former UP CM took a swipe at the Prime Minister and BJP that has now run into a controversy.
बहुत अच्छी बात है, 1 महीना नहीं 2 महीना 3 महीना वहीं रहे, अच्छी बात है। वो जगह रहने वाली है, आखिरी समय पर वहीं रह जाता है बनारस में।
And BJP leaders were quick to tweet against condemning those remarks by Akhilesh Yadav. Siddharth Singh tweeted, "Those who are inspired by Indian culture don't think badly of their enemies, but those who are inspired by Jinnah culture speak this type of language." Dr. Mahendra Singh tweeted, "On one hand, today the whole country is praising the Prime Minister after seeing the grand Kashi Vishwanath Dham. On the other hand, Akhilesh, who has a Jinnah the mentality, is so shocked to see all this that he's made such a bad statement against the Prime Minister." News now from Jammu and Kashmir, and 2 Jammu and Kashmir armed police personnel died, 12 have been injured. This after 2 terrorists attacked a police bus near a police camp at Zewan on the outskirts of Srinagar yesterday evening. One of the fallen policemen is an assistant sub-inspector and another a section-grade constable. The injured have been shifted to hospital where the condition of some is said to be critical. Well, let's go across to Nazir now for more. Nazir, give us more details of this attack and what's happening now.
Well, injured have been shifted to hospital yesterday soon after that attack, and as we have reported since last evening that 2 policemen, including an ASI, Gulham Hassan is his name, and Shafiq Ahmed Ali is a head constable, have died, and condition of injured is stated to be stable in the hospital. That is what the police are saying. And very importantly, what police are saying, that one of the attacker has been injured in the retaliatory firing. That's what police say, but he has not been caught or killed or captured, but they are saying he has been injured in this attack, and they are saying Jaish-e-Mohammed front called Kashmir Tigers are behind this attack. That's what police has said in a statement. And what we also know, there were around 25 policemen in the bus when it came under heavy firing. Militants tried to get inside the bus, but the doors were locked. So they resorted heavy firing on the bus, in which 14 police personnel were injured. 2 of them died due to injuries. And it is the first such incident where Prime Minister has actually asked for a report, has asked for a detailed report on this incident that shows the seriousness of the situation. Wherever the government has been saying that things are normalizing, but such attacks, which is the biggest in recent times, has put a big question mark on the situation on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir.
All right, Nazir, thanks so much for joining us with those details. Well, news now from Madhya Pradesh, where a man was shot dead yesterday, allegedly by men belonging to the right wing. 3 men have been arrested in the case now, and a protest was held in the city last evening. The police are yet to confirm if the men belong to any right-wing group, but the wedding function was organized by followers of jailed godman, so-called godman Rampal. Rampal, who is from Haryana, is serving a life sentence in connection with murders. Now, Rampal's followers say he follows a different wedding ceremony popularly known as Ramayani, which takes only 17 minutes. The attackers have alleged that such a marriage is against the Hindu religion. Let's go across to NDTV's Anurag Dwari now for more. Now, Anurag, this is very shocking what happened here. Give us more details about, what was this tension, what led to this attack?
Yes, Gargi, this former Sarpanch Devilal Meena, who is also a BJP supporter, and he was supported by the BJP body elections, and he won from there twice. He was shot dead. He was taken to a hospital in the neighboring Kota in Rajasthan, where he died later. But phone videos showed the attacker dressed in red pullover and pointing a gun. But a murder case has been lodged against 11 men who were identified. And
all right, Anurag, they are telling us about this attack and the men barging into this wedding ceremony, which they said went against Hindu religion, that it was not being done properly, and killing the Sarpanch there. In other news now, news from Bihar, and two people, one of them just a 7-year-old boy, were killed in a series of explosions in the Bhagalpur area in a span of a week. The blasts have triggered tension in this communally sensitive area. No one's been arrested so far. Now, the blast took place near the Makhdoom Shah Dargah. The children were playing near the Dargah Ghat on the Champa River and seeing a tiffin box in the nearby garbage dump. A 7-year-old boy, Amrit Das, picked it up. As soon as it was lifted, the box exploded. The boy was rushed to a hospital where he died. The bomb disposal squad was brought in to inspect any other abandoned tiffin boxes, and locals claim that 2 live tiffin bombs have been recovered from the spot. On December 11th, a rag picker sustained severe injuries when he picked up a carton lying near the rail tracks, and hearing the explosion, the railway police had reached the spot and took the severely injured man to a hospital where he then died during treatment. So 2 such bomb attacks have taken place. Welcome back. Former Chief Justice of India and nominated Rajya Sabha MP Ranjan Gogoi in trouble after his controversial remarks about his attendance in the upper house in his recent interview to NDTV. 2 Trinamool MPs have now submitted notices to initiate a privilege motion against Ranjan Gogoi for his statements.
I go to the Rajya Sabha when I feel like, when I think there are matters of importance on which I should speak.
Okay.
Right?
Have you been able to ask any questions?
And I am a nominated member. Right? I am not governed by any party whip.
Sure.
So, right. And therefore, whenever the bell rings for party members to come, that doesn't bind me.
Okay.
I go there at my choice,
right,
and I come out at my choice.
Okay.
I am an independent member of the House.
It's these comments made to NDTV which may have landed ex-Chief Justice Ranjan Gogoi in trouble. 2 TMC MPs have moved the Rajya Sabha for initiating privilege motions, saying Ranjan Gogoi's statements amount to contempt of Rajya Sabha. Gogoi's statements undermine the dignity of the Rajya Sabha and refer the matter to the Committee of Privileges.
Against this, the Trinamool Congress has decided to bring a privilege motion. The privilege motion will be duly submitted, and then Ranjan Gogoi needs to be hauled up before the Privilege Committee of Rajya Sabha.
Congress MP Ami Yajnik has also submitted privilege notice against Ranjan Gogoi.
रंजन गोगोई के खिलाफ आपने प्रिविलेज मोशन का नोटिस दिया है?
हाँ, दिया है।
या किस ग्राउंड पे दिया है मैं?
उन्होंने अभी रिसेंटली पब्लिक डोमेन में बताया है कि मैं इच्छा है तो मैं जाता हूँ पार्लियामेंट, वरना नहीं जाता हूँ.
Justice Gogoi, seen in Parliament today, refused to comment. As per the procedure, if the Rajya Sabha chairman finds merit in the notice, the same can be forwarded to the Privilege Committee. And based on the report of the committee, if the motion is passed in the upper house, Gogoi might also lose his Rajya Sabha membership. With Arvind Gunasekhar, Usama Shab for NDTV.
Ahead of elections next year, West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee is in Goa for a 2-day trip, her second visit in as many months. The visit comes amidst growing speculation of the possible alliance or tie-up with Arvind Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party, despite denials from both the parties. Now, both the AAP and Trinamool are looking to displace the Congress as the principal opposition party in the coastal state.
Mamata Banerjee on her second trip to Goa in as many months, pledging to fight the BJP, also defining what the TMC stands for.
TMC also, it is Church, Temple and Mosque. And फाइट करते हैं किसका साथ? बीजेपी का साथ। क्या जीतने का संभावना है? आप लोगों को भरोसा है कि आप जीत सकते हैं?
As Goa prepares for elections, the TMC says it's already opened its account in Goa even before the votes are cast. Venoli MLA Churchill Alamau, a former CM of Goa, and his daughter Valanka joining the Trinamool Congress. Alamau, the lone NCP MLA, merged with the Bengal party, which is trying to make its mark in Goa. Alamau was supposed to join earlier, but Mamta's scheduled meeting with NCP Supremo Sharad Pawar delayed the switch from NCP to TMC. But the talk of the town is a possible tie-up between the TMC and the Aam Aadmi Party.
हम वोट डिवाइड करने के लिए आए नहीं है, हम वोट को यूनाइट करने के लिए और तृणमूल कांग्रेस के अलायंस को जिताने के लिए बीजेपी का ऑल्टरनेटिव नहीं है। अगर किसी को इसको सपोर्ट करना है तो डिसीजन वो लोगों को लेना है, हमारा डिसीजन तो हो चुका है।
The Aam Aadmi Party has also set its sights on Goa after a disastrous campaign in the earlier election, where the Congress emerged as the single largest party. Yet, the Aam Aadmi Party seems non-committal so far, in spite of the TMC's keenness to come together. Aam Aadmi Party's Atishi says there will be no alliance with the TMC, so there is no question of any talks with them. The TMC says it's here as the Congress has failed to be an effective opposition. With the grand old party facing regional defections even on the day Congress General Secretary Priyanka Gandhi Vadra was visiting last week.
Difference between Congress and Trinamool Congress is we are not keyboard warriors, we are real warriors. We are not a party which only exists in the yardsticks of Twitter and Facebook. We are a party which is out there in the ground.
A depleted Congress and a divided opposition directly helps the BJP in Goa. The Trinamool Congress is keen on a tie-up with the Aam Aadmi Party, but the Aam Aadmi Party seems disinterested and reluctant. The BJP, which faces anti-incumbency, is watching this space closely. With camera person Praveen G. Rohit, Saurabh Gupta, NDTV.
Welcome back. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend several programs today on the second day of his visit to his parliamentary constituency of Varanasi in pole-bound Uttar Pradesh. Last night, he met the chief ministers of BJP-ruled states. He also carried out inspection of Varanasi development works. Today, the Prime Minister will participate in a conclave of chief ministers of BJP-ruled states to discuss governance-related matters and attend the anniversary celebrations of a yoga foundation and meditation center. According to reports, the chief minister will share with the Prime Minister their respective governance-related best practices. Prime Minister Modi was up and about till late on Monday night. Despite his hectic schedule in the day, UP Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath could be seen accompanying him on the walk in the temple town and the visit to the recently revamped station there. Well, let's go across to Alok Pandey now for more. Alok, tell us about the Prime Minister's program today, and also the Prime Minister was up very late inspecting development works in Varanasi, accompanied by the UP Chief Minister.
Well, I think that was the most fascinating bit, wasn't it? I mean, not the fact that he was taking a stroll through Varanasi, but the fact that the Chief Minister was him frame by frame. So all the photographs that have been tweeted now have the Chief Minister, Mr. Adityanath, in frame. After the events of yesterday, when you and I were discussing this through the day when you were anchoring, when we saw the Prime Minister put up a solo performance, so to say, during the inauguration of the temple. I mean, by performance, I mean that his presence at the event. And how it was he who led the prayers at the Kashi corridor inauguration with no other person in the frame. How he was the one who took the dip in the Ganga with nobody else in the frame. How he took that car through the streets of Varanasi, even accepting a turban and a garland, or I think gamcha, from someone, again only him in the frame. So while the messaging from the BJP in the day yesterday was this larger-than-life persona of the Prime Minister, and clearly signaling that he was the one who would be the main face of the BJP in the UP campaign, and that has been the case in elections in the last some time. At the same time, the presence of Mr. Adityanath in the evening, and the fact that, I mean, he would be present as per protocol too, but the fact that, you know, so many photographs of both of them together were also tweeted does indicate that it's the Chief Minister who will also have a key role in the campaign. It's no suspense. I mean, it's not a surprise at the end of the day, but it's interesting that those photos have been tweeted out. So today, what he's going to do with the Prime Minister, he has two, the first half of his day is reserved. We were hearing that there would be some kind of a Chief Minister's conclave, so there are BJP Chief Ministers who are here. But then the Prime Minister has also tweeted photos of him with these Chief Ministers saying that an extensive meeting was held last night. So whether there's another program that's going to happen in the day remains to be seen. But the first half from about 9 a.m. to 2:45 p.m. he will be in his guest house where he will be meeting. After that, at around 3:30 p.m., he'll be going to a temple complex on the outskirts of Varanasi. So there's an annual festival that takes place in that temple. And he will be addressing a gathering there. Then he will visit the temple. And after that, he will fly back to Delhi at about 5:30 p.m. in the evening.
Now, several of the projects launched by the BJP before the UP polls have triggered attacks from the opposition leaders, mainly UP Chief Minister Akhilesh Yadav, who says that they were initiated by the previous Samajwadi Party government. In fact, yesterday, the former UP Chief Minister took a swipe at the Prime Minister and BJP that's now run into a huge controversy.
बहुत अच्छी बात है. 1 महीना नहीं, 2 महीना, 3 महीना वहीं रहें, अच्छी बात है. वो जगह रहने वाली है, आखिरी समय पर वहीं रह जाता है बनारस में.
In fact, the UP BJP ministers, many of them hitting out at that. Siddharth Nath Singh tweeted, those who are inspired by Indian culture don't think badly of their enemies, but those who are inspired by Jinnah culture speak this type of language. Dr. Mahendra Singh of the BJP tweeted, on one hand, the whole country is praising the Prime Minister after seeing the grand Kashi Vishwanath Dham. On the other hand, Akhilesh, who has a Jinnah mentality, is shocked at all this, that he's made such a bad statement against the Prime Minister. Now, in other news, the Central Board of Secondary Education, the CBSE, has now dropped a controversial passage that appeared in a Class 10 exam last week that openly promoted regressive notions about women. The move came hours after Congress President Sonia Gandhi raised an objection to the passage in the Lok Sabha, calling it blatantly misogynist. The passage, which has gone viral on social media, had bizarre sentences like emancipation of the wife destroyed the parents' authority over the children and servants, and that it was only by accepting her husband's way that a mother could gain obedience over younger ones.
The passage contains atrocious statements such as, I quote, "Wives stopped obeying their husbands, and that is the main reason children and servants are indisciplined," unquote. The entire passage is riddled with such condemnable ideas.
In Omicron news now, the first death due to the new variant of coronavirus has been reported in the United Kingdom. Britain, among the countries worst hit by the global health crisis since last year, is believed to be the first government that's officially announced a death from Omicron. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has now sounded the alarm because of high levels and rising rates of transmission. In a rare televised address, he said that emergency measures were needed to prevent hospitals from becoming overwhelmed in the weeks ahead, and has launched an ambitious COVID booster shot program to stop the virus spread. We spoke to Professor Lawrence Young on this threat from this new Omicron variant in the UK.
Do we at this stage know what is the ideal booster combination to ensure that people get more antibodies against Omicron?
No, but we know that boosting, particularly with the RNA vaccines, works very effectively. So almost irrespective of what you've had for your first 2 jabs, a booster with RNA is where we have most data, but it's likely that any vaccine given as a 3rd dose will provide a significant increase in protective immunity. The big question, of course, is what does this mean for the Omicron variant? All the indications from laboratory studies and from a few studies in boosted individuals is indicating that boosting should protect at least from severe disease,
right,
Omicron, if not from symptomatic disease. But actually the data is coming in all the time.
Professor Young, the reason I ask you this is because here in India, for millions across this country, we've got the AstraZeneca vaccine. It's called Covishield in India. It appears to work extremely well with 2 doses. And the question being asked now is, will a 3rd dose as a booster be helpful? Why the same vaccine? Because mRNA vaccines like Pfizer and Moderna don't exist in India. They haven't been introduced. Hence the question, would a third dose of the existing AZ vaccine work as well?
Yeah, so I answered the question in relation to the data that we have where immune responses have been measured as a consequence of a third booster dose. It's very, very likely that any vaccine given a third time will provide significant protection, but we haven't got real-world data on that. But my anticipation is, from everything we know about the immune response and we know about vaccination, is that even a third dose with AstraZeneca should be protective and should provide that high-level immunity you need against what is a very, very infectious variant of coronavirus.
What about designer booster shots in the future designed to take on Omicron? Is that something that needs to be done faster?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the thing is this: what we're doing at the moment by using the current vaccines as booster shots is providing, if you like, quantity rather than quality. So this gives such an overwhelming antibody response. Also, it gives that very important T-cell response. But it's so overwhelming that even though these vaccines are based on the original Wuhan version of the virus, it's sufficient to give you protective immunity, at least in the short term. But it's quite clear that we're going to need modified vaccines in the future. These vaccines will not only be modified to include the variant changes, particularly in the spike protein, but also are likely to incorporate other bits of the coronavirus, perhaps to provide longer-term, more cross-reactive protection in the future.
Welcome back. Gujarat has officially accepted 10,000 more deaths caused by coronavirus in the figures of compensation paid to families of those who lost a loved one during the pandemic. The figures were submitted in the Supreme Court, which asked the state government to make wider efforts to spread the word about the scheme so the common man and those living in remote villages get to know about it. The figures provided by the Gujarat government have now pushed up the countrywide fatality count up by 2%. And so far, the number of Omicron variant cases in India has gone up to 40 after 2 more cases were reported from Maharashtra. This is the variant that has now alarmed the world, a variant of concern by the World Health Organization. Maharashtra has reported 2 more cases, one from Latur and one from Pune, and that makes it 20 cases in all of the Omicron variant that have been reported in Maharashtra so far. Well, let's go across to Saurabh now for more. And Saurabh, give us more details of the latest cases. Are these people who have travelled in from abroad, and also what steps is the government now taking?
Well, yes, these people do have travel history. They are both, patients who have international travel history. So obviously they will be quarantined. Now, the government has set in place measures to stop a local spread, which means that anyone who comes in from abroad and who may be possibly carrying the infection is stopped at the airport, intercepted at the airport, and tested. And if they test positive, then they're sent to institutional quarantine. Otherwise, also they have to opt for quarantine if they're coming from the at-risk country. So the government's efforts seem to be at preventing a localized spread, which would mean restrictions if a localized spread happens. Now, another thing that many, experts or COVID, sort of task force members point out is that initially, when the variants arise, they seem mild, and then in the case of Omicron also, it seems to be mild infections at this point. But eventually, if hospital admissions rise, then it puts pressure on the system, and then, of course, they may need to announce restrictions. So that's something that they want to avoid. Now, apart from that, the government is also taking action where, COVID protocols are not being followed. For example, yesterday at a 5-star hotel, there was a case registered after a party was held in violation of COVID protocols. So where COVID protocols are not being followed, the government is again taking steps to ensure that people follow COVID protocols, because that is the only way the government believes that they can avoid restrictions in a city like Mumbai, given the fact that, there's already been so much of economic cost of having restrictions. The government wants to avoid that at all costs. So which is why they're focusing more on enforcing COVID norms and stopping a localized spread of any new variant.
All right, Saurabh, thanks so much for joining us with those details. So the latest cases there emerging from Maharashtra. But let's talk about the first case of Omicron that emerged in the country, which was a foreigner in Bengaluru. When it was revealed that he had tested positive for Omicron, it was also found out at that time that the person had already left the country. Remember, Omicron, the samples have to be sent for genomic sequencing, so it takes time. But now arrests have been made, and the police in Bengaluru have arrested 4 people, 2 of them working with the firm owned by the African National, and the other 2 were working with the laboratory that gave him the negative RT-PCR report that allowed him to then leave the country and go to Dubai. Let's go across to Shrija for more on this. Shrija, give us more details of this entire episode, because it was very shocking to learn when it was first revealed that 2 people have tested positive for Omicron and they are from Bengaluru, that one had already left the country, and everybody wondered how that happened.
Yes, in fact, India's first Omicron cases were reported from the city of Bengaluru, and of the 2 Omicron cases, the first was a 66-year-old traveler. Now, he was a representative working at a Johannesburg a pharmaceutical company. He had arrived from South Africa. This was on November 21st. What we also understand is that he had tested negative, and then he had carried a negative RT-PCR test, and based on that he was staying at a hotel here, a high-profile hotel in the city of Bengaluru. But however, once he was subjected to the test, and the COVID test, we understand he had once again procured a negative certificate, this even before the genomic sequencing could come out, which means by 27th of November he had already escaped to South Africa. And then we understand that the police, including the police and the BBMP officials, they traced the contacts, which is about 24 of the primary contacts, nearly 240 of the secondary contacts. So, however, all of them tested negative. But in this particular case, clearly we are looking at a lapse as far as the lab technicians are concerned. And we understand as of now, nearly 4 people have been taken into custody. Also, Anuchit, the central DCP, has confirmed to NDTV, saying that 2 of them are lab technicians who actually helped him procure this particular negative certificate, and 2 others are also people, in fact, who had worked with him in the pharmaceutical company.
All right, Shrija, thanks so much for joining us with those details. Now, the big news internationally is the first death due to the Omicron variant of COVID was reported in the UK. Britain, among the countries worst hit by the global health crisis since last year, is believed to be the first government to officially announce a death from the mutated virus. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has sounded the alarm because of the high levels and rising rates of transmission. In a rare television address, Johnson said that emergency measures were needed to prevent hospitals becoming overwhelmed in the weeks ahead, and launched an ambitious COVID booster shot program to stop the virus spread. Well, to talk more about Omicron and what we're seeing in the country and around the world, we're now joined by Dr. Muzaffar Lakrawala, advisor BMC for the COVID jumbo facilities. And we're also joined by Dr. Rajinder K. Dhamija, WHO fellow, National Institute of Epidemiology. First, Dr. Mufazzal, to start with you, we have so far these cases of Omicron in the country, the most reported from Maharashtra. But if we see what's happening across the world, especially in the UK, where cases are spreading and they've sounded an alarm, also called for booster shots, what do you feel we should now do?
Good morning, Gargi. And I believe that the cases would rise. It's infected around 63 countries worldwide as we speak. That's what the WHO current statistics say. But what we need to understand is Maharashtra is one of the other sites, like Delhi, where a lot of people, Mumbai especially, where a lot of people from abroad would come in. The good thing that the government has done is it's very, very stringent on all those people who are coming in, who are testing positive, and sending them for genomic testing, which was not done in the past. So that's one good thing, that we are trying to block it right at the entry and having special Omicron wards, as in the Seven Hill Hospital in Mumbai. What we do need to understand is, like the first thing that has happened in UK, they say that they're expecting 24 to 75,000 deaths because as the numbers go, we do know one thing for sure is that the Omicron variant is far more transmissible. So a lot more people can get infected. There's a threefold higher house transmission as compared to the Delta variant. And it does have immune escape as well. So the effectiveness of the vaccines, we have a study from UK which says that the Pfizer 2-dose has dropped down to as low as 34%. And a 3-dose booster has gone up to around 75%, vis-a-vis a Delta where the 3-dose was giving 95% or more protection. And that's why the governments are all clamoring for the booster, especially in individuals at risk, the frontline workers, those immunocompromised. Gargi.
Right. So, Dr. Dhameja, doesn't it make sense then for us too to go in for booster shots, especially for those who are vulnerable, and especially given what we now know about the reinfections? The only, I suppose, something that gives some comfort is the fact that most places, and even South Africa, reporting that it's been mild, the cases, but with the first death being reported in the UK, it is worrying.
Good morning, Gargi. You're right that the transmissibility is known by now, that it is highly transmissible. There is some evidence of immune escape. But having said that, this findings which have been brought in the science is mainly from the protection induced by the vaccines. So the immune escape has been seen in those people who have been vaccinated, particularly in the Western countries. In our country, most of the people have already had prior infection from the second wave in the country, and then on top of that, our 87% people have had one shot of vaccine, and more than 50% have double dose of vaccine. So we are a little different from the others countries which are seeing immune escape. And secondly, you mentioned about the reinfection and the people who are vaccinated having infection. So this is a little biased because we are testing those people who are travelers, and all the travelers have mandatory vaccination. So it's a little bit skewed data, and it's very early to say that the Omicron is causing a lot of reinfections and its immune escape as compared to the Delta. But having said that, this is highly transmissible. There is a chance of having lots and lots of infections around, and to tackle that, the government has started doing the micro level containments or at the district level. So these three things which probably would be required in our setup would be, first is that we have to strictly adhere to make the people adhere to COVID appropriate behavior, encourage vaccination as much as possible. Even those who have one shot have to have a second dose, maybe children now included in the vaccination. So, and the third thing is the micro level, as I told you, the containment or the mitigation measures, as we all public health professionals have been having this opinion that we have to tackle at the entrance and as well as at the clusters or at the containment area, so that they don't develop it or they don't spread it. There is no doubt about that. There will be exponential growth of numbers in coming weeks, but we are following UK and the South Africa. The South Africa is 60 million people. UK is again 67 million people. South Africa, on the one hand, is having declared as a mild infection, more transmissible with R0 of 4. While on the UK, there is a level 4 alert, which says that the best case scenario would be 24,000, 25,000 deaths, and the worst case would be 75,000 deaths. So these are early days for us. We are following them in 2 to 3 months, like in first wave or in the second wave. Still, there's 8 to 12 weeks time, maybe at least 8 weeks time, which we can follow them and we can see the dynamics of the pandemic, how it evolves in this country. But at the same time, we have to be overcautious, not to be panic. So we have to be prepared for the numbers in the infrastructure. So obviously, having said that, we need to be cautious. We need to strictly adhere to the COVID appropriate behavior along with vaccination and micro containment areas.
Well, that COVID-appropriate behaviors is just not happening. People, I think, are now completely fed up. And unless, there's some sort of restrictions put on them, nobody is really following that. Like you have in Mumbai, isn't it, Dr. Mufazzal? Over this weekend, you had a ban on large gatherings. And, and what, Dr. Dhameja said that right now we've only been testing those coming in. We need to do more aggressive testing and genomic testing and, to track if the Omicron variant is already here. Because let's face it, it's been a month since it's been detected. It was obviously floating around before that.
Gargi, I do understand that curtailing is a real challenge. And what you said correctly, we've got COVID fatigue, which is set in. So the government might impose a lot of rules, but are people going to follow? I think people are just done with masking, with social distancing, and whatever you say. The governments can only put in rules, but people have to follow them eventually. So the best thing that the government can do is, and what I've seen on ground is that people have started taking the second doses. People who had actually deferred from doing it, luckily because of the Omicron scare, they've started taking their second doses. So that's what the government can enforce and try and make it facilitated for earlier thing. Prevention, again, is better than cure. So prevent the vaccine from spreading across India, because then it'll be very difficult to contain this Omicron scare. Like Dr. Damecha said, the transmissibility is very, very high. We do know that R0 is much higher than in the other cases. And therefore, the best way is to block it at our borders as far as we can.
Right, and what I meant was that, Mumbai at least has put these restrictions. So, you have a restriction on big gatherings, but there are no restrictions anywhere else. And, big gatherings are taking place. We've seen the election rallies taking place. Dr. Dhamecha, your view on that?
I think we have already published signs of super spreader event. So obviously, it's a big issue in any pandemic or pandemic like SARS-CoV-2, which keeps on evolving and with the new variants having more transmission or more infectivity. So this is very crucial, not to go outside, not to make a part of the crowd yourself. This is the responsibility of our own people. The science is doing its own job. The researchers are doing their own job. The governments and policy makers are doing their own job. But onus is on us not to make it happening around us. So we need to be very, very, unless and until it is required, very urgently, we should not be moving out unnecessarily, making a part of the crowd. So that's very important. And the last thing which I want to say through your medium is that we need to take a balanced view. So obviously, the things would evolve, the dynamics of pandemic will evolve. So we have to take, as the pandemic evolves, with the dynamics of the science, and we have to believe in science, not on the speculations which are going around with the numbers floating around from the other countries. Each country has its own geo-epidemiological equation. So we have a young population. Our seropositivity has been very high in the second wave, and we have already had inoculated almost 80%, at least with the first dose. So the focus should be complete vaccination along with the strict adherence to the COVID appropriate behavior by law enforcement agencies.
Right, definitely have to push the vaccinations, also get more vaccines, and then, as you said, open it up for children, hopefully soon. Thank you so much, doctors, for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you.